going to work a two-color icord bind off, like a striped icord bind off that will match our cast on that we worked. And then at the end, I will show you how to graft the beginning of your icord with the 3 live stitches so that it'll look very seamless. And then we'll go back and we'll graft the cast on as well, okay? All right, so using our main color yarn, we're going to cast on 3 stitches using the knitted cast on method. So that's basically like, I'm going to go in the stitch as if to knit, but I'm going to actually cast that on here. So that's a new stitch. And I'm going to do that 2 more times. 2, 3. All right, so this is kind of the beginning of our icord. So now we're going to bring our contrast color yarn around to the back, right, because it was in the front. And I'm going to knit 2 stitches. Give that a little tug. And then I'm going to knit 2 together through the back loop. Okay, so this is the stitch that was newly cast on, and this is the stitch that's part of the cowl. Okay, so knitting those 2 together through the back loop is what's going to bind off 1 stitch. So I'm going to put my needle in as if to knit both of those together through the back loop. There we go. Now I've just bound off 1 stitch. Give that a little tug. Now I'm going to slip these 3 stitches back purlwise to my left hand needle. And I'm going to work with my main color now. And I'm going to knit 2. And then here's our yarn with our contrast color. Here's a stitch that was part of the cowl. I'm going to knit those 2 together through the back loop. Okay, and then you're just going to repeat that all the way around. So I'm going to slip these 3 back, and now I'm going to, using my contrast color yarn, knit 2 and knit 2 together through the back loop. Slip 3 over. And then knit 2 with the main color. Knit 2 together through the back loop. You can kind of start to see it forming. Slip 3. You can kind of see how I'm laddering the colors up. Knit 1, knit 2, knit 2 together through the back loop. Slip 3 back. I'm going to show it in continental. But I'm sure you can get the idea. Now knit 2 together through the back loop. Yeah, that's starting to look really nice. Slip. Okay, so we can kind of see it starting to grow here along the edge. And it's going to create a really nice, solid edge to your cowl. So just continue that way until you have 4 stitches left. Okay, and I'll meet you back there. And we'll finish up the bind off and then graft the beginning of our I-cord with the 3 live stitches so that we, have a very seamless, beautiful bind off. All right, so I'll meet you there. All right, so I just ended the repeat. So with my main color yarn, I knit two together through the back loop, slipped the 3 stitches back over, and now I'm actually just going to knit 3 with my contrast color. I've already broken my yarn, but I'm just going to knit 3 with my contrast color. So doing this will help keep the stripe going. So I'm not going to knit any through the back loop. I'm just going to knit 3. And then I'm just going to slip these back over. All right, now we're going to graft these 3 live stitches with the 3 stitches here from the beginning. I'll use my needle. So we're going to graft them to the contrast color, but we're going to use our main color yarn. So we're basically going to, using the Kitchener stitch, create a new row of stitches that will graft the live stitches with the beginning of the I-cord, and it will make this join disappear. So you can see there's kind of a hefty little gap right there. So I'm not going to use my needle. I'm going to use a tapestry needle. So I like to use a straight one. And I'm going to thread my main color yarn onto my tapestry needle. And so now we are going to weave it purlwise through the first live stitch and just slide that stitch off of your needle. And I'm going to actually put those a little farther, because now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the first stitch here at the beginning of our I-cord, and you want it to be in your contrast color. Okay, so I'm going to go through both legs, so you're basically going underneath it, but you're going through the stitch. And then you want to weave your needle, find that stitch. So this was the live stitch that we just pulled off of our needle. I'm going to go in again through the left leg. And then I'm going to go through purlwise, second live stitch, pull that off. And now we're going to weave through the second stitch. So this was the first. Here's the second stitch at the beginning. I go under both legs. Come back through the left leg of that second live stitch, purlwise through the third live stitch. I want to give it a tug. We don't need our needles anymore. And now we're going to go through the third stitch at the beginning. So here it is. I'm going to go under both legs. Back again through the left, under the left leg of the live stitch. And so now we've basically just created an extra row of knitting. So yeah, it makes it very seamless. It keeps the stripes going, right? So that you have main color, contrast color, main color. And now we can kind of weave in this end. I'm going to kind of weave it in. So here, this is where the cast on stitches were. Just going to go through that. There we go. Very seamless. Okay, and now you can just weave in your ends. Okay, and I'm just going to weave in my end real quick, but I'll also have more about the fixing and finishing techniques in lesson 4. But I'm just going to do this real quick while we're here. So I'm just going to go underneath the yarn overs. And that will hide really well. Come back up. Okay. All right. Now we can graft this end here. Okay, hello. We are going to graft the 2-color icord cast on here that we did for the beginning of the Truly Textural Cowl. So the bind off was up here. So I am going to take my main color yarn here and I'm going to place it on a tapestry needle. I like to use a tapestry needle that has a pretty pointy tip. So what you want to do is you want to have your end on the right side of your I-cord, and you can see that there's a pretty hefty gap right here. So we're going to be using our main color yarn because we're going to be kind of creating a new row in between to close the gap, and we're going to be doing it into the contrast color stitches. So I'm going to be grafting into these contrast color stitches from the so this was the beginning of the cast on and this was the end of the cast on, and I'm going to be going through these contrast color stitches. This last one is kind of tricky to find, but it's right here. Okay, so I'm taking my main color yarn and I'm going to go underneath both legs of my first contrast color stitch right there. Okay, I'm going to pull it through and pull it pretty tight. So now I'm going to find my first stitch, but I want it to be on this side. So I'm going to go underneath both of these. I'm going to do the same thing with the second stitch. Go under both legs, creating a new stitch. And then find the second stitch on this side. And now the third stitch. I think the third stitch of this I-cord is right here. There we go. And you're done. So you can see here's where this new kind of row is that we created. And you can see it closes that gap really nicely. And it almost looks like, you know, there's no bumps right there. Okay, so now you can just weave this end in. I'm just gonna weave it in here.